Well, good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, depending upon where you are in the world, and welcome to today's DevOps.com webinar. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, moderator for today's event, and I welcome you. As always, we have a great webinar on tap today, but before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping items we need to go over. First of all, today's event is being recorded, so if you miss any or all of it, you will be able to watch it again. After today's webinar, we will be sending out an email that contains a link to access the webinar on demand. And we are taking questions from the audience. So if at any time during today's presentation you have a question for either of our panelists, please don't wait, don't hesitate, just use your GoToWebinar control panel and submit your question. And we'll take as many questions as we can near the end of today's presentation. All right, with that, we will go ahead and kick off today's webinar, which is CI plus CD plus release orchestration. See why it's better under one roof. Our speakers today are Shawn Ahmed, who is Vice President of Product Marketing at CloudBees, and he's being joined by Anders Wallgren, who is VP of Technology at CloudBees. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
So Shawn, I know, yeah, you're welcome. I know that you are going to be kicking us off, Shawn, so I'm going to put myself on mute and let you get to it.
All right, well, thank you. It's really great to be with you. Thank you, Charlene, and I'm really excited to be joined by Anders, my partner in crime here at CloudBees. So very excited about telling you about some of the topics that we're going to be covering here, and a little bit around where we're headed, and a little bit about what you can do with CloudBees today. By way of background, my name is Shawn. I've been with CloudBees roughly about 6 months. Prior to this, background in multiple large and small companies, and predominantly been focused on the development side of things, and partly also been in charge of development studios, and had a lot of fun building some great technology and bringing to market, and super excited about joining CloudBees. Anders, why don't I pass it over to you? A little bit about yourself.
Sure, Shawn. So my name is Anders Wallgren. I've been VP of Technology Strategy at CloudBees for, about 2 months now. Before that, I was CTO at ElectricCloud for about 15 years. And then, of course, ElectricCloud was acquired by CloudBees just recently. So I've transitioned into that role, but happy to be here.
Wow. Well, thanks for joining me today, Anders. Well, look, we'll begin by talking a little bit about how we've joined forces. We're really excited as a company, CloudBees, that we have had the opportunity to join forces with ElectricCloud. CloudBees' focus has for a long time been in the CI/CD space, and de facto leader in the CI space with offerings and in the arena of Jenkins, Jenkins X, both in terms of being the largest single corporate sponsor there, but also 85% of code commits that are done to those environments have been done by us. And so in many ways, moving down the SDLC to help people bring software to market faster, release orchestration was one of those areas that we really found was the new frontier for many of our customers as they got really good at CI. And to be able to join forces with ElectricCloud, the de facto market leader in that arena, that was simply a really great moment for all of us at CloudBees. However, a lot of companies will ask us the question and say, well, you joined forces, that is great. We understand that you've covered more of the SDLC, but what is the impetus? What is the bigger picture around this? Why did you do it? And a lot of that has to do with where our customers are at in their digital transformation. There used to be a time when we used to say software is eating the world, but I'd venture to say that, and I think Anders would agree with me here, that software is already eating the world. And there's some learnings to take away from those digital transformations that companies have embarked on as they have implemented DevOps, as they have gotten better at CI and CD and ARO. They tell us that the most important thing to them in these digital transformations as it pertains to the software is safely and quickly get new innovation to market in hands of customers quickly to create sustainable competitive differentiation. They'll also tell us that we have to treat and make software development and delivery a core part of the business. It has to be as natural part of our DNA as what we've been doing for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, whichever industry they've been in. And we need these things to get more intelligent. We need to be able to introduce more AI, and we need to be able to introduce more machine learning into our processes. Well, for many of our customers on the CloudBees side, that was Jenkins. That journey has started with Jenkins. It is the de facto platform for CI/CD for many of our customers, and 20 million users that we know of are using this on a day-to-day basis with their workloads. There's 200,000 implementations that call home, and there's even orders of magnitude greater that don't. So in fact, when companies get started, Jenkins is usually a top of mind. Similarly, I wondered, Anders, you guys have done phenomenally well in the CDRA space. Why don't you tell me a little bit, or the audience a little bit, about how your journey has been and how you guys ended up becoming the leaders there?
Yeah, it's really been a great great journey, great process. Obviously working very closely with our customers to make this happen. But what we focused on the last few years has really been what we call adaptive release orchestration. That's one word for it. Continuous delivery release automation is one of the terms that Forrester uses for it. And we've been, as you can see in this chart, as I like to say, bragging a little bit, I have to admit, we're literally off the chart on this one. And really what that comes down to is our ability to manage pipelines and environments and orchestrate releases and automate deployments. And really we're the only solution out there that lets you both start fast and adapt to whatever your unique needs are as they evolve over time. So a lot of our customers are, they're not necessarily starting out being, massive DevOps adopters, right? They want to get there. That is the desired state. And one of the things that we do with our customers is help them along that journey by meeting them where they are today. So whatever your process is today, that is something that we can bring into Flow and model in Flow and be able to bring that along and then adapt to your needs as they change and as they evolve. And it's been a great journey. Really been enjoying it.
Well, thanks, Anders. And I guess, Anders, you'd agree with me that those customers of ours that have sort of implemented CI/CD/RO, they tend to, on the DORA metrics, do phenomenally well. Not everybody may have gone completely over to the stage where they've become elite performers, but I would think that most companies that have practiced CI/CD and DevOps, both culturally, tooling-wise, automation, orchestration, they will all say, look, we deploy code more frequently into production than we used to do before by orders of magnitude, and we fail less. We certainly fail less in bringing these features to market. And when and if we have a failure, we recover a ton faster. And so a lot of customers will say that to us, and we will see them grow orders of magnitude as they try to achieve getting into that elite area. So it's a great job to most practitioners that are out there who have, or all practitioners that have grown and done large jumps in their DORA metrics. However, when we are out there, and again, to just remind everybody, we're talking about what the impetus for us joining forces was and how that benefits all of you guys. There was a challenge at the heart of that we were still seeing. Even though customers are adopting CI, they're adopting CD and doing ARO, we would find that our customers, when we talk to them, at least on the CloudBees side, we would speak to developers and engineering management folks, would say, what prevents you from really getting to the elite? We would hear things like developers saying, hey, look, yeah, we've gotten really great at developing the code, but I'm unclear how people are using it. I don't know how to improve it. I don't really know what that experience at the end is. I am just so focused on writing code and getting code out, and I don't even have access to who uses it. Simple things like, who are the users? What are their titles? Where do they work? Where in the world are they? When during the day do they use it? How do they use it? And are they getting an impact out of it? Just completely divorced from that process. And we're not seeing, a lot of our work getting to production fast enough. We're not getting to experiment with it. We're just not getting our code into production, be able to test it and drive it in production the way some of the elite companies are doing. And what we're ending up doing is spending a ton of time not developing, just chasing bugs, chasing issues, pointing fingers, and we don't like it. What we like to do is solve really great problems in really innovative ways and deliver features fast. That's what we want to do. So when we went and talked to the management of those teams and said, well, what's going on with you guys? We'd hear all the time, well, you know what? We're really frustrated with things like imposed deadlines that are coming from the business. We're not directly connected with why the business wants this feature or that feature. We're not really seeing the user story. Some of us know it, but the speed at which we need to get innovation out because there's an imposed deadline frequently makes us regress back to making very hard, really just choices about how to deliver the software, and something's going to have to get cut. And with the addition of having lack of visibility to the people, the tool chains and DevOps and data role technology that we're using, we're only going about as fast as we can. And so we're not going to get any better. And I know, Anders, you guys worked a lot with ops folks. What did you guys hear?
A lot. I mean, you know, and we work both with ops and also with release managers, right? I think, you know, I don't know where I would slot them in on the chart here, but they play a pretty important role, especially in organizations that are not maybe quite all the way to sort of complete continuous delivery or complete sort of DevOps end to end. There still is quite a bit of release management going on, and I think, you know, there are very similar complaints there, right? You know, speaking a little bit on the release side in terms of just lack of visibility. When are things going to show up? What are the approvals? You know, if you're working in a governed industry and or using ITSM or ITIL type processes, you know, how do I get things into production? What are the gates that I have to jump through? What are the approvals that I need to get? And what are the, you know, what are the, you know, the tools that I have to use to do that? And, you know, we're pretty used to seeing this phenomenon in the industry where Agile has been incredibly successful and powerful, but it's mostly, I would argue, helped the development side of the house in becoming faster. And then you have, you know, this issue where basically, you know, you might have a CI cycle where you run all of your tests and get all of your code done in 10 minutes, and then it takes 90 days to get that code into production, right? Because of the process that's involved in that. So orchestration and enablement and all of those things are incredibly important to gain velocity there, while at the same time having that safety, right? So speed and safety is really what's important there to these folks.
I couldn't agree more. So Anders, I mean, what we see with our customers is that we fundamentally, what we have today and the root cause for some of these challenges above and beyond is really that teams and people within teams, the tool chains they use, the processes across them are very often just very disconnected. They're fragmented, and often because of it, there's no real common language being used to communicate between the various teams and people. We feel that data often ends up being siloed in its own systems, and you don't get that cross visibility that you want. And processes end up being dictated inside of the individual tools that they're using in their DevOps tool chains. But sometimes, you know, if you're using CI/CD, you're at least orchestrating some of that. But all across, you just don't have it. And where you really want to be, organization tell us, is we want to be seamless. We rather want to feel like we're a connected organism firing like a synaptic network where everybody's firing at the right time, and we're reducing the traffic related to just sort of hit and miss traffic along the way. That's what we really wanted to do. And so in context of why did, again, CloudBees and ElectricCloud join forces, you think about what we were thinking about jointly was the introduction of how to solve this particular set of problems. And for both of our companies, what we found was, and what CloudBees was uniquely inventing and thinking about, was this area of capabilities that we are introducing as a category of new capabilities in the market, software delivery management. At the heart of that, we were thinking about, what does it mean if you had a common data set across your entire DevOps tool chain? Could you capture all of that data that is being generated, the artifacts that are being generated by different teams, different people, different tools, often tool chains sitting at 60, 90, 80 tools being used? If you were to catch them in one place and provide a single place where you could look at the relationship with these assets, what would that look like? And not having to replace the existing DevOps tool chains. People are going to use what they love to use. But if we were able to extract that information, bringing it into one place, what kind of guiding principles around universal insight would that mean? What kind of insight could you get? Would you be able to do continuous learning better? Would you be able to cross the data pool that you have in your process left to right in the SDLC, go up and down and depth and stay at the high level? Would you be able to get those types of views across your software development and delivery chain that you typically don't have? Oh, wait a second, what would that mean to processes? If processes and governance and workflows could be defined across these tool chains inherently such that multiple number of teams were operating almost like a business process of software delivery, similar way that the business has done with theirs, would we be able to get speed and be on the same page without having to have one meeting after another meeting? We think that would mean that all functions would be collaborating more purposeful, and seamlessly to amplify the value creation that everybody is involved in at different times doing different things in the SDLC. Those were guiding principles for us when we introduced the software delivery management category of capabilities in software. And so when we think about how do you enter that market, we're introducing in the very near future CloudBees version 3, where our engines and execution engines and the various capabilities from both companies come together into a single powerful suite amplified by SDM capabilities. These SDM capabilities have 5 core tenets to it, at the heart of which sits a system, a common system of record that ingests informations from your SDLC, your DevOps tool chains, all the way from research all the way through to how it's being adapted and used and supported by the company in production. And throughout that entire process, it's driving and defining those relationships that provide you the opportunity to both actively ad hoc query the actual data itself, generate dashboard and reports, so you can have individual DORA metrics on applications, on teams. You could take a look at the tasks individual developers could have their dashboard. You could have the kind of views that management can get at the highest level from a support engineer that could track their way all the way back to a user story, or somebody in the development chair sitting and creating a new feature that can triage across users, research, market data that has been done and meetings that have been had, data that has been generated on what the problem statement should be, what is the issue that we're trying to solve. That type of access with policies that you can put in place as you start deploying policies across the SDLC that include multiple teams across multiple different types of tool chains, with workflows that you can kick off, with processes that you can define, and intelligence like recommendation engines that could learn the baselines of how and where you develop, so that you can take the AI that you want to bring to our system of record and really run some sophisticated analysis on the data that allows you to forecast better, that allows you to look at the world in terms of predicting better on how and where you deliver software. Another view of that is kind of think about on the left side, all these input points, just a slightly different view. But I'm only showing here roughly 9, 10 different tools. I'm sure some of you guys use these tools in itself on a day-to-day basis, and they all generate a ton of assets and artifacts that get collected throughout the entire process. Imagine a world in which all of these are connected so that you can easily start asking questions no matter who you are within the organization that is involved in the value creation effort of software. You could be a developer, you could be on the ops side, you could be on a PM, you could be a PMM, you could be on the support side. It doesn't really matter. You all have the same view into the data of where a request is, what features are deployed where, what strategies and hypotheses did we make. All of these things are now connected in one place so that you can start making some really intelligent decisions about the process. And when that happens, we believe that we have a very unique place and opportunity together as one CloudBees. I think our opportunity is very similar to what the opportunity was presented to many companies that your organizations may know today. Take SAP. They really standardized the process around order to cash. Salesforce did the same from a customer opportunity candidate all the way through to business. Workday does the same for a potential candidate to a successful employee. We can do the same for our software idea all the way through to adoption. And that's the glue that we want to become, the cornerstone of companies' core we want to become and think we have the opportunity to be. But that's our future. That's why the impetus for us coming together is, but there's a journey you can start today. And that's what Anders and I are really excited about. Is most companies may not have a full knowledge of what CloudBees is all about. So this is a journey that you don't have to wait for. SDM-like software is not something that's you have to wait for. There's core capabilities that you can start with today. And at the heart of CloudBees suite today is Jenkins. We've always been known as the contributors and code committers to Jenkins and supporting Jenkins open source environments, the community, as well as the contributions we make to the code. But we've also over the years created support and services around CI/CD and generally DevOps, and support around OSS environments for Jenkins and our own distributions. This has been the key cornerstones of the business that we had. But with time, we've also created commercial offerings that improve upon the OSS environments with new capabilities, some proprietary, and we're constantly pushing proprietary capabilities also into our free distributions of the OSS software as well. Core is a great commercial solution that people get into when they're doing multi-team management of CIs, when you have multiple teams, multiple masters, multiple processes running, multiple teams running CI, to get a more controlled, centrally managed system for all of your efforts that can run natively in both modern or on traditional platforms to get your loads up and running in such a way that you can scale your system, manage it from one place, and have all the computing power at your fingertips. Core is a great place to start going to do that. But then customers also move from CI/CD into ARO. And we are now extremely excited about having Flow, or CloudBees Flow, as our adaptive release orchestration engine as part of that process. This is an incredibly powerful engine that we're going to start showing you today on the call. It gives you the opportunity to actually bring software to market faster, takes control on and provides governance over very complex release orchestration processes where you have complex hybrid environment, whether you're delivering applications to Kubernetes cluster or cloud native apps versus applications on bare metal or your own environments, self-managed. It has the ability to orchestrate those processes in a beautiful way to ensure that those people who need to be involved are involved, the decision gates, approvals, and the process runs smoothly from end to end, that automation is being done on testing and checking and auditing and policies that you're putting in place. That's really important part of actually getting the software safely to the actual production environment. And for some of our customers who then like to just have a very opinionated, let me just get going with DevOps, small team, I just want to get started now, get out of my way, we can get you started with CI/CD with CodeShip in just a simple few minutes with a very opinionated way of doing that. And across all of that, we provide insight and analytics to the system with DevOptics. So these are some of our commercial offerings that you can bolt upon some of the open source offerings that you may be in today. But if you take the products aside and you just really think about how do people actually use this? What are they actually doing with the software, and how does that work? Really the way in which our customers really get into it is they start with CI. They start with build and test automation. That's where our customers begin. And many customers who are running applications or building applications that take long times to build, that examples of those are C, C++ application, IoT application, large mobile builds, things that where you're looking at, multiple hours of build and test time. We also have build acceleration as a capability that came from Electric Cloud. This allows you to take hour-long builds and deploy those builds in such a way and test them such a way that it can be reduced down to just mere minutes to do it. Very often, feature management is being used directly from the get-go in the coding so that we can bring our feature releases and decouple some of the features from the actual deployments such that you can deliver and bring features directly into production environments and observe and manage them, experiment, do A/B testing, and have that safety switch called the kill switch, or that sort of insurance policy that if things aren't working, you can turn them off. That's a powerful way developers want to use to get features out of market faster and get the feedback they require, and then bring the feedback back to improve continuously the feature, and when ready, get it quickly delivered, deployed, and released through your ARO flow. We believe that that's something you can do today to bring innovation to market safely and at accelerated speeds. And that's something that we're really excited about showing to you today. So I'm going to pass it over to Anders here to take us through the scenario that we're going to be looking at here. Anders, over to you.
All right, thanks, Shawn. So I just want to tell you a little bit about what I'm going to show you before I show it to you. Basically, we're going to look at what we call our Acme Global Motorcycle Storefront application, which is just a sample app that we're using. So we'll take a look at kind of what that looks like inside of Flow, and then take a look at an example of a Flow release pipeline that's been set up around that, and the stages and tasks and integrations with tools in that case, and then look at things like our approval gates in the various in between the various stages, which can be automatic or manual. Obviously, we prefer that they be automatic. I think everybody would, but we acknowledge the reality of the fact that we still do some manual processes and do allow for that. And then look a little bit and talk a little bit about the auditability and change history and how that plays into the kind of the governance and auditability aspects of the software development lifecycle for organizations that are subject to those kinds of requirements. Look a little bit about at the environment modeling and promotion model that we have, and then just go through a simple, very quick kind of example of a code commit, path to production. And focusing in particular on the integration between, the great Jenkins CI process, and then how that kicks off using the integration into a Flow release pipeline, and then go through that Flow release pipeline and show a little bit of things like ITSM integration and those kinds of things. And whoops, I went a little bit too far there, so let me back up one slide here if I can. There we go. Sorry about that. So here we see the, whoa. Okay, I may not be the only one controlling the slides here. Sorry about that.
It seems like, sorry, Anders, it seems like my mouse pointer was going crazy here. So I have not touching the mouse pointer on my keyboard. I apologize.
Very good. Step away from the mouse, sir.
Stepping away.
So here's just a quick overview of what an application model looks like in ElectricFlow. In this case, we've got a couple of pieces here. We've got a back end, which has a couple of components in there, a database component and a back end, server component, essentially, and then a Node.js based front end. And this is just a simple example to show, how you can model applications inside of ElectricFlow. And part of the reason for doing that modeling is to be able to then construct processes around that model. And for example, put together what we see here, which is a release pipeline in Flow. So a few things that I want to point out here and talk about. The first thing is that our release pipelines, our pipelines in general, are structured around what we call stages. So the columns that we see here, pre-QA, QA, pre-prod, prod, even audit reports, are stages. Now the audit report one, and I'll talk about that in a minute, is a little bit more of a logical stage as opposed to the other ones, which are, execution stages. So for example, taking a look at the pre-QA stage, you can then see what we have inside that column there are tasks. And really, this is where we start to see all of the integrations that we have in ElectricFlow to all of the tools that you already use. One of our kind of philosophical mantras is that we don't want to come in with Flow and be the 101st tool that you use to deliver your software, because you've already got 100 tools. Our point of view and what we're trying to do is really to be the tool that helps you run, or be the platform that helps you run all the other tools, right? And so to that end, what we have is a multitude of integrations with all of the the tools that you know and love and use. Issue tracking tools, source code management tools, security scanning tools, CI tools, ITSM tools, all of those kinds of things. Chat ops, Slack, Twitter, everything, everything. And then one of the things that we also have is you can create gates between these stages. So you can have exit gates or entry gates, and this is where we would have things like, for example, at the verify QA notify task here in the pre-prod stage, you can see that we have a little bit of a manual, the little hand there. Basically, we have a manual verification that has to happen there, and that could be because maybe you're doing manual testing at that point. Maybe it's not fully automated. Obviously, philosophically, we would love for everything to be automated, but reality is reality, and not all of us have been able to automate all of our tasks, and we allow for that. And then, and I'll point out another thing here too, which we'll see in the example as we go forward a little bit here, is we have an ITSM integration here with ServiceNow, so we can create a change request before we go into prod, which obviously would be important for any organizations that are governed in that sense. And as we go forward here, another thing I want to point out is kind of on the right side here in the audit report stage, which again is more of a logical stage than sort of a physical execution stage. But what we do there is we can collect lots of different audit information that may be important to you, approval reports. So, kind of a list of who approved what in the pipeline, evidence reports. So if you are obliged to collect evidence of certain things, for example, you have policies around code coverage. You might have policies around tests that you need to run. You may need to provide evidence that you did all the security scans that you were supposed to do, those kinds of things. And maybe you're collecting things like duration reports because you're tracking cycle times. So you want to make sure that hey, we do have a manual stage in here. We do request manual approvals. We want to make sure that we don't spend, days and days and days waiting for those approvals. We want to spend minutes or at most hours on that. So you may be collecting information about that. So that's good for audit, that's good for governance. Another thing that we have as well here, which you can see here if I were to click on the little button here, we also have a notion of change history, which is really more about kind of what changed and what's happened here. And you can look and see a very detailed view of all the operations that have been done to the model, to the processes, to all the objects that we can see here. Now, this is less about auditing and governance and more about, hey, this worked yesterday and it's broken today. What changed, right? So everything that you do in the Flow product has change history. So you can go back and see what changed, and you can see, somebody made a change yesterday and that caused a problem, and you can even roll back those changes. And there's lots of functionality around managing those types of things. Very, very important to keep things running, obviously. So the next thing I want to talk about here is a little bit about environment and configuration type management. And what we see here is kind of the view of the various environments that are being used in our stages here. So we've got our Acme motorcycle application and our 4 stages that we have here, the pre-QA, QA, pre-prod, and prod. And each one of them is associated with an environment. The little orange icons here represent environments. Flow has a rich set of functionality around environment management, whether that be talking to existing environments and just doing deployments on them or running work on them, or even configuring the entire life cycle of environments, setting up Kubernetes clusters, setting up containers, setting up virtual machines, talking to AWS, talking to Google Cloud, talking to Azure. All of those kinds of integrations are there. So you may be deploying, into a fixed environment when you go into production. It's all set up, or maybe it's a blue-green environment that you're doing a more sophisticated deployment to. But quite often, for pre-QA and sort of the earlier stage environments, it's nice there to be able to have environments that get set up and torn down all the time, so that you don't have resource consumption when they're not being used, and that they're always set up correctly, and you don't kind of have these snowflake environments that you might suffer from. So each stage here we've associated with a particular environment, and we'll typically do a deployment into that environment as part of the tasks that are being done in that particular stage. And part of this, harkens back in a lot of ways to some philosophy use them for your earlier environments. Now, when you deploy into production, you might be hitting a lot more machines. You may have a cluster of machines that you're running on, whereas if you're running in your QA environment or your pre-QA environment, you may have one or just a couple or so. But the essential part of the deployment process is the same. And our point of view very strongly is treat that deployment process as a feature of your product, as a feature of your pipeline, so that when you get to the part where you're deploying into pre-prod or staging and then doing your deployment productions, you've debugged your deployment processes on your way there, which is a very, very powerful way to run your software development lifecycle, and really helps ensure that you don't have oopses by the time you go into production, because you've debugged the thing along the way. So kind of going into a little bit of our example here. So context switching here into GitHub. So we've got our GitHub source repository here for our motorcycle storefront application. And as you can see here, we've got our backend server, our front-end server, Node.js, all of those kinds of things. This is a typical N-tier application. As we saw in the application model, we've modeled that in Flow as well. And really what we want to do here is we want to make a code change. We want to change, some green stuff to be red or some red stuff to be green, very simple, kind of change that we're making here, inserting some data into the database here. And then, we're going to commit this data into the source code repository. And this is where, things get kind of interesting, right? Because this is really now where we're talking about how Jenkins and CloudBees Flow work together. So in this case, Jenkins gets a hook call from GitHub and does a CI build. Runs the build, does some unit tests, and then at the end of that does a Flow trigger. So triggers into Flow to kick off the release pipeline. So again here an integration between the two products. That's actually existed for a long time. We obviously have lots of customers who use Jira who use Jenkins for their CI. So we've got a very tight two-way integration between Jenkins and Flow. And now Jenkins has done the CI. It has kicked off this release pipeline. So what we're looking at here now is the runtime incarnation of that release pipeline that we looked at earlier. And what we've seen in particular here, just a couple of things, I want to point out is so we've ran through all of the pre-QA tasks. We pulled Jira tickets, and this may be part of the audit reports that we're generating here. So we're pulling out the tickets that were part of the commits here. In this case, we're not doing any Git checkouts here because Jenkins handled that for us, obviously. But maybe we're running some SonarQube stuff, and maybe we created a Docker container to use to deploy and manage our application here. So we'll run a twist lock scan on that, and maybe some other security tests. And then we transition into the QA phase. We deploy to the QA environment, as you remember a couple of slides ago, talking about how these stages can be associated with environments. We run some functional tests on there, and then maybe we update some Jira tickets, right? Maybe we go back and say, all right, we pulled all the issues that were part of this commit cycle, and now we're updating those issues, saying we ran all the functional tests and they were all tested. Again, this is all part of the governance and auditability requirements. And then we get to here, and you might notice that we're red here, and just talk a little bit about that, because one of the things I want to mention is we're not always on the happy path, right? Not everything works all the time. Sometimes people trip over the network cables. Sometimes environments aren't set up properly. Sometimes environments are down. And one of the important things we have here, and I'll just kind of call this out and just talk about it a little bit, is if you have a failure in a stage like this where something failed, and you see there's a little 1x here, and it's a little bit of a subtle reminder that this was the first time through this stage. What I could do here is I can just rerun the stage. So let's say that we had a problem, right? We ran into a problem. We sent out a Slack notification saying, hey, we had a problem. Somebody goes and fixes the issue and then comes back in and says rerun stage, right? So now we rerun the stage, and what we would see later on is this would then say 2x, meaning, hey, we ran this stage twice. And that's something that you want to keep track of from a kind of a key metrics perspective, because that was rework, right? And really what we had to do was we had to run a stage twice because we had a problem. So you probably separately want to have a little bit of a retrospective on that, of what failed, why did it fail, what can we do to make sure that doesn't happen in the future, and so on. But the important part here being that, you don't get kicked back to square one. It's not, do not pass go directly to jail, do not collect $200. You fix the problem, you rerun the stage, you move on, just like you do in real life, just like you would if you weren't using this as an orchestration tool. So, and also from inside of this view, if you were interested in what all of these tasks were doing, because we're not just tracking this work, right? We're orchestrating this work. We're kicking off this work. We're doing this work. And you can drill down from here all the way down to the individual tasks that ran on individual machines, even look at the log files, all of that kind of output. But now as we get into the next stage here, so we reran the pre-prod stage, and if you notice, now it's green and it says 2x, meaning we ran it twice to get green, so that's good. But now we're sitting here in the prod. And one of the things, and I'm just going to jump back to the previous slide here, and as I talked about before, one of the things we do on the way out of the pre-prod stage is we create a ServiceNow ticket. And when we get to the prod stage, we're waiting here because we need that change request to be approved, and it's a manual approval that we're waiting for, which is, speak to the hand. So we're sitting here kind of waiting for that. And if we go in and look into the summary here, you'll see that we've actually, we not only did we create the ServiceNow change request, because we've got a bidirectional integration there, but we also just helpfully put the link in there for you, so that if you are the right person to go in and approve this request. Now you could certainly just go straight into ServiceNow and do that. If you live in the ITSM tools and never want to leave your ITSM tool, you can obviously do that. But if you're working from the release pipeline here, you can click and go directly into ServiceNow and go into the ServiceNow ticket, or whatever other ITIL or ITSM tools you're using. We integrate to others as well, and do an approval. And then the bidirectional integration that we have between these tools, we'll be able to call back into Flow and say, okay, thumbs up, we've gotten the manual approval for that, and we can now go and proceed and go into production. So now you can see that we've gone through and done our deployment to production. Using the deploy functionality. We probably ran, some smoke tests for that. Now the deployment that we did here, I want to talk just a little bit about that. Now there's a really rich set of deployment functionality in Flow. So you can just do straight deployments, set up a bunch of WAR files, copy them out, restart, WebLogic or JBoss or whatever it is that you're using, or IIS or what have you, literally hundreds of integrations to those things. But you can also do very simple but very sophisticated deployment methodologies. You can do blue-green, you can do canary deployments, you can do completely custom deployments if you want to do phased deployments. But here we're just doing a simple deploy, and then we're running some smoke tests. And then if those pass, then we update the prod status and notify people and those kinds of things. And then we've collected, after we go into prod, we then go collect all of the information that we might need in order to do, to generate audit reports and generate evidence for all of the governance type activities that we need to do. So just kind of summarizing here, we've seen kind of the entire commit to production lifecycle here, with deep and rich integrations with CI tools like Jenkins and ITSM tools like ServiceNow, Slack integrations, Jira integrations, SonarQube, Twistlock, tons of different integrations to do this, to kind of make this the one place, the one pane of glass that you can manage your path to production, sort of your commit all the way through production. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Shawn.
Well, thanks. That's really, really great overview, and I really appreciate it. It shows how much power we have to deliver software safely and fast today. And Anders, I really appreciate how you showed, the entire orchestration from build test automation and Jenkins and triggering Flow, how easily developers with a single pull request can create, really kick off a very complex and however fairly well orchestrated pipeline of how to get that feature into production. So that was really great. And so I hope what folks walk away with as you see that is that there's a ton of things you can do today. But our intent with SDM, as we covered that earlier in the presentation, is to move both left and right and unify our suite into a single experience. so that customers have one place to go to be able to do CI, CD, ARO, analytics, insight, and can cover more of the actual SLDC process itself, left to right, and get more teams, more individuals that are part of the natural process of building, delivering, supporting, marketing, selling software to your customers, that they're all part of the natural process of producing and bringing software to market. And when I think the organization is capable of doing that, that's truly when the DNA of the organizations will shift. That's truly when essentially software development becomes a core part of your business process, the same way order to cash is a business process, same way candidate to productive employee is a business process. And that's the big opportunity that exists out there for organizations that are going through digital transformations to be able to do. And to take that a little bit further, once you sort of go through and become really good at what Anders showed, which is what you can do today, and then next you adapt and become and think of this as a business process or a core part of your business and organization, that's when the data, the baseline of performance starts to get built, and the single system of record inside CloudBees V3 gives you the opportunity to bring really, really advanced analytics across the entire chain to identify cluster behaviors where you might have challenges, where you have enough data connected in the system of record that allows you to start baselining where issues occur that might impact your forecast of when your features will be delivered. This is where you can start dropping deadlines and instead intelligently forecast when and where you will be delivering software to market. And now the business really views and sees this as one intelligent contextual business process, much like many of the other processes within the organization. That's what's exciting to us, which means that our future state, the things you can get started with today, will be coming together in really, really, really conducive ways for our end customers, such that the seamlessness of this experience, whether you're an operations person, whether you're a developer, engineering management, PM, documentation, support, it doesn't really matter. You get a single sort of user experience towards all of this data that's coming through in the system of record. And all of these capabilities are being amplified by the brand new set of capabilities we're bringing into SDM through our product known as CloudBees V3. So in the future, state for us, very simple way for you to work with us and transact with us will be through our commercial offering CloudBees V3 and Jenkins X and Jenkins in the future. But this is, as you can see on the left side, a set of capabilities you can start with today. So that's sort of the journey we are on and why we're so excited, all of us, both on the ElectricCloud side and the CloudBees side, to be joining forces, because it's truly together we're able to do a lot more powerful things for our customers than individually. That's sort of the content presentation, but what do you do next? Where do we go from here? I think there's some great places for you to come and experience this technology, get your hands on it. Obviously, if this is something that you're interested in learning about now, things like, how is this procured? Does it run on premise, which of course it does, and is there small team packages? Can I get started with that? What is the price? All of those types of questions, you can reach out to us via our website, or you can directly email the info line for CloudBees. You'll be assigned very quickly somebody to respond to you. So there's immediate actions you can take right away. But if you want to come and meet us in person, DevOps World, Jenkins World is a phenomenal conference, yearly conference, where we co-host with the CDF Foundation and Jenkins community. A large, several thousand people come and visit this conference, where There's chock full of sessions, workshops, hands-on, demo booths, and there are a whole community of companies that are there that are focused on DevOps that will be on display. And there's a lot to learn. Networking opportunities are great. The first one's coming up in August in San Francisco, and we'll be running one in EMEA in December. Similarly to that, ElectricCloud has been one of the founding members of the DevOps Enterprise Summit and been a member of that and had a largest presence there for multiple number of years. The DevOps Enterprise Summit runs in June, just ahead of the DevOps World in London, and then we'll come in October to Las Vegas. That's another place where you can come get hands-on and learn more about our products and talk to people who are experts within the field. But if you go to our website, you'll under the event calendar also found CloudBees Days, and these are one-day workshops that you can come to in sessions where you can learn about our solutions, and you can bring your own laptop, bring your team, and sit in and get hands-on with our technology as well. It's a great way of doing it, and we have quite a few of them coming up here internationally, and we've just finished a series here in the U.S. and so you may want to take a look at what's coming there, and maybe there's one close enough to your city you can attend. And then, so of course, Paris Jam area meetups for Jenkins is coming up as well. So a lot of different ways that you can get in touch with us and work with us and get to know. Another great place, just go to our website, request for information, get in talk, chat to an expert right there. There's multiple ways for you to get in touch with us. With that, I hope that we will find a path to go together. Anders and I are resources you can tap on as well. We're available to chat with you. And we hope we'll find and go on some journeys together like thousands and thousands of customers that we've done that with before. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to the operator, and I think we're going to go a little bit to a little Q&A.
Yeah, we do have a couple minutes for questions, and we have gotten a ton of questions in so far. So we will get to as many as we can, but just so you guys know, if we don't get to your question during the question and answer period, the folks at CloudBees will be getting a copy of all the questions, and I'm sure they'll be more than happy to follow up with you offline. But let's go ahead and dive right on in. The first one, I wanted to know how you are collecting the audit reports, and also about the configuration edit history to find what went wrong when, and how those are collected as well.
Happy to talk about that. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of how audit reports are collected and generated. Typically, each organization is going to have a slightly different set of requirements for what they require. But almost always that will include things like pulling information out of issue tracking systems, for example, to see what functionality was included in a particular release. Whether this is a I think Mark had asked a little bit earlier, I was watching the question, sort of, isn't this kind of waterfall-y when I was showing the stages? And the answer is no, not at all. I mean, I think just a sidetrack for a little moment before I get back on the audit thing, this release could be something that you do twice a day or 10 times a day, right? The real process here is, if you're going to do continuous delivery, you still need to build, test, qualify, and release the software and deploy the software, right? And that's a process that you have to go through. Now, some software organizations may do that once a month, once a quarter, maybe even once a year still. And a lot of organizations are going to do that multiple times a day. There's still a process that you need to go through. And one of the things too is, I really focus kind of on one single release pipeline here. If you're working in a more complex environment, one of the really powerful features around this is you may have multiple release pipelines that are going at the same time for various components that make up your applications. And so a lot of the power comes in around that. And so kind of back to the question about auditing and governance and those kinds of things, it's really a question of what information you need in order to show your auditors that you did what you document and show you and kind of document what you do. A couple of thoughts on that. One is simplifying greatly. Auditors basically want two things, right? They want you to document what you do, and they want you to prove that you did what you documented. I'm simplifying, but that is the essence of it. And something like a release pipeline in ElectricFlow or in CloudBees Flow, and I didn't talk very much about this, but you can actually define these things through code. So there's a domain-specific language that you can use to define all of these things. So you literally have source code as documentation for how you do things. And then the runtime version of these things then are the proof that you did what you documented. And so if your auditors come back to you and say, hey, look, we really want you to move that security scan earlier in the process. We don't want you to even go into staging before you do that security scan. Then you make that change, and then you can literally show the auditors either visually or through code, here's where we made the change to run that security scan earlier in the life cycle. I think that's very important. And then in terms of change history and so on, it's really functionality around, something changed and it was working yesterday and it's not working today. What changed? Who changed what? So it's really about, more about sort of the team. We're making some changes, we're evolving how we do these things, and something broke. Let's go figure out what changed so that we can fix it. So that's more of a kind of a day-to-day effort there.
Excellent. Okay, great. Let's see. I think we can get to one more. Does ElectricCloud allow pipeline templates set up so teams can choose the appropriate template?
Absolutely, and that's something I didn't cover in the demo today, just out of concern for time. But yeah, there's a lot of functionality in CloudBees Flow around templating and shared best practices. So you can have template pipelines, template applications. There's a whole what we call service catalog feature in Flow, which out of the box gives you a set of kind of jumping off points for creating CD pipelines, for creating integrations, all of those kinds of things. But that's fully customizable so that you can give your teams self-service access to do things like set up a CD release pipeline, set up an environment, tear down an environment. And really what that does is, and self-service is really an important aspect of how you get velocity on teams. Because one of the things we found over the years is, teams spend days, sometimes weeks, waiting for environments to be configured, simply because you have to go through the process, right? What does the security team say? What does the NetOps team say? All of those kinds of things. But when you can automate these things and provide best practices to the team and say, here's how this organization sets up an environment for doing X. Here's how we do an environment for Y. Here's how we do a CD pipeline for this kind of application. Here's how we do a CD pipeline for that kind of application. Then it's self-service. And then it's, you have the right permissions, you go in and you click, and a couple of minutes later, you have what you need, as opposed to, submitting a ServiceNow ticket, waiting for the guy to get back to lunch and see the ticket. And then, 2 weeks later, you have your environment, which is, typically the way things have worked. So it's a really powerful functionality to allow you to do self-service with governance. And again, that's kind of our mantra, speed with safety.
All right, great. We're about 2 minutes to the top of the hour, so unfortunately, I don't think we have any more time for questions. But as I said before, that the folks at CloudBees are getting a copy of all the questions, so I'm sure they'll be more than happy to follow up with you after today's event. I do want to remind the audience that today's event has been recorded, so if you want to listen to it again, or if you missed any or all of the event, you will be able to access it on demand. We are going to be sending out a link in an email after today's event that will get you right to that webinar on demand. The webinar is also going to be living on the DevOps.com website, so you can always find it there. Just go to DevOps.com/webinars and look in the on-demand section, and it should be right there waiting for you. Shawn and Anders, thank you very much for walking us through your roadmap there and giving us some great information. I'm sure it was most appreciated by the audience.
My pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Right.
Thank you, Anders.
And
Thanks,
thank you to the audience for joining me today. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm signing off. Have a great day, everybody.